Emil Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. All right, it's me. This is our micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. Although you don't have to be an AAPI or an AAX, an Asian American F, Filipino, an Asian American Chinese, Asian American, an AK. You can be an ALL. All's the rest of you. You're welcome to the show. This is a talk show. Behind me, my sidekick, Kulintong Gong, because you need one of these. You need one of these. This is the micro talk show where we ask WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think, especially in these trying times? We're just looking for answers, right? We just want to know what's going on, why there's probably not going to be any changes. We're still talking about Uvalde. We're still talking about the shootings. Still talking about trying to get the right timeline to mesh because something isn't fully transparent. And today we got the Texas Department of Public Safety, Colonel Stephen McCraw, getting up there in front of people to explain to people what's going on. And guess what? They screwed up. They absolutely screwed up. Well, the people on the scene, not necessarily the Texas DPS. I mean, they're sort of the people in control, but he was blaming the chief of the independent public school system, the IPS he called it, a small little independent policing agency. The chief there made a decision. The chief was nowhere near the podium at the press conference today, which indicates to me that the big dog, the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, said, look, let me handle the press. But there were people, national, I mean, it's worldwide, right? People want to know what the heck happened so that we have 19 school children killed. And we have 19 police officers waiting in the hallway. Now, I should not make a donut reference, but I will. There were 19 law enforcement people in the hallway inside the school, apparently, from this press conference, and the shooter's inside the classroom. And a decision was made not to attack the shooter because the chief of this school district police department made the decision it was not an active shooting situation, that it was actually a barricade situation. And heck, he doesn't want his officers getting shot. Let's call for reinforcement. Let's give it an hour. And according to the timeline from the Texas Department of Public Safety, they just laid it out. Shooter came in around 11:30, got into the classroom. There were the police, the law enforcement agents were in the hall. They decided it was a barricade situation, not an active shooter, so they didn't go in. Meanwhile, there were calls being made from students inside the school saying, there's a shooter in here. Send the police quick. And no one. The decision had already been made to call in the Border Patrol tactical squad. And no one budged in the hallway to go after the shooter. I mean, that's what happened. And that was admitted by Colonel Stephen McCraw of the Texas Department of Public Safety. Here's what he said.
The decision was made on the scene. I wasn't there, but at the same point in time, a decision was made that this was a barricaded subject situation. There was time to retrieve the keys and wait for a tactical team with the equipment to go ahead and breach the door and take on the subject at that point. That was the decision. That was the thought process at that particular point in time.
So that was it. They made the decision. He's actually copping to it right there. And then, he's getting harassed by the press. Not harassed. They're aggressively asking questions, waiting to be called on. And the the colonel tries to calm him down.
For the benefit of hindsight, stand by, stand by, all right? I got it, okay, I got it. Okay, hey, for the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision, period.
Of course, for the benefit of hindsight, where I'm standing now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision. You got to hear that again.
Hey, for the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision, period. There's no excuse for that. But again, I wasn't there, but I'm just telling you, from what we know, we believe there should have been an entry at that as soon as you can. Hey, when there's an active shooter, the rules change. It's no longer, okay, it's no longer a barricaded subject. We don't have time. You don't worry about outer perimeters. And by the way, Texas embraces active shooter training, active shooter certification, and that doctrine requires officers. We don't care what agency you're from. You don't have to have a leader on the scene. Every officer lines up, stacks up, goes and finds where those rounds are being fired at, and keeps shooting until the subject is dead. Period.
Until dead. Period. This is the tough, macho Texas Department of Public Safety head, the director, Colonel Stephen McCraw, talking after the fact, after he admits that they made the wrong choice, they made the wrong decision. And this is heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Almost as heartbreaking as hearing the story told again of one of the students inside, a little girl who played dead by covering her body with the blood of a friend, putting it on her, and then lying there playing dead so the shooter doesn't come back and shoot her. She lived to tell the story. She's recuperating in the hospital. One of the few who actually made it to a hospital and is surviving, but it's going to be a nightmare, the survival. But that story of covering yourself with your friend's blood, that is heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. And to think that at this very moment, as all these details are being understood, the Texas Department of Public Safety held the conference about 2 hours ago. But now, this afternoon in Houston, about 300 miles away from Uvalde, the NRA is having their big convention. And meanwhile, people all around, not just this country, but all around the world are wondering, again, what is wrong with America and their gun epidemic? And so now I bring in my good friend, the professor of Asian American Studies and Asian American Political History at the College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, to join me to talk about this, because we were going to originally just talk about the primaries, talk about the California primary coming up in about a week and a half or so. And we're going to talk about the midterm primaries. But when this happens, Dan, can this not but affect everything in this political cycle, you think? I mean, the midterm? Or what do you think? What kind of effect?
It can have a major effect, but it's going to be one sided. People who take the side of law enforcement are pretty much committed, no matter what happens, no matter how bad law enforcement might look. They're still going to remain committed to taking the side of law enforcement, and so there may be some people who were in the margin. There's a lot of people who now are. I think it's about half of the voters in the country at this point are non-aligned. They're not. They're neither Democrats or Republicans or registered as such. That group of people may be affected, and it's a substantial population at this point. But the
Yeah.
people who are pro law enforcement, and who at the same time were among those who attacked the Capitol in January
Yeah.
of 21, they're gonna they're gonna stay exactly in the same position they're in. And so, in effect, that's what you're seeing when you see Ted Cruz come out and refuse to answer, as you put it, strong questions. And there are international
Oh
news
yeah.
journalists. I mean, there are people from all over the world asking him the same question, and he just walked away from it. And he acted as though they were the problem because they were questioning American exceptionalism.
I
Those,
saw that. I saw that. You know what else I took exception with is he actually took his hands and placed them on the
yes,
reporter's
he did.
lapel.
He
Like,
did.
like what are you doing questioning, America? Like, how dare you? And it was like,
That's
oh,
technically an assault. That's
yes,
technically an assault. It's.
exactly.
I would be in fear of an impending physical attack if he had done that to me. And unfortunately, I have to tell you, he would have gotten the worst of that if he
Yeah.
had done
Well,
that to me.
when I saw that, it was I believe it was a Sky News reporter,
Yeah,
uh, a European. I think
he
that's a
had a British
Murdoch. Sky
accent.
News
Yeah,
is, yeah, Sky News is a Murdoch operation,
it is.
and so it was not. It was just journalistically sound. Cruz was, really. I think he was trying to dodge the question. That's all it was.
And he was trying to sound really calm and reflective, and at the same time, he refused to answer the question.
Yeah.
He just
So
didn't want to look like he was running, but he was running.
see, this is the thing. This is the thing. As soon as, like, on the very first day after, it was Cruz saying, well, we got to consider the constitutional rights of the shooter. We got to consider the constitutional rights of of people." And this is sort of the hypocrisy of the right and all those who are pro First or Second Amendment, and also who are hell bent on uh, being anti-abortion and protecting the rights of the unborn. When what about the rights of the born? Well, what about
Yeah,
the rights of the living?
yeah,
Specifically, these 19 kids.
yeah.
And
For ever since I started teaching, I always juxtapose anti-abortion with death penalty. And many of the same people that are vigorously anti-abortion are very pro-death penalty. And so, I say, there may be a moral and ethical justification for that. There certainly has been a legal justification for that. And students are really surprised when I tell them that back in the 70s, during Jerry Brown's first two terms, two consecutive terms, there was actually a state law that undid the death penalty. There was no death penalty. There was only life imprisonment, but it only lasted a few years. And conservatives put up uh, a, uh, uh, a measure that gets around the legislature, of course, right? An
yeah,
initiative, and they restored the death penalty. And it was for killing officials, public officials, right? And it was supposedly for the protection of police. And at the time, there was a decreasing violent crime, incidents of violent crime in the state, and that was the same period where they went for three strikes you're out,
yeah.
where you could get life in prison for stealing three bicycles.
Well, well,
For a
this is the
felony. Yeah,
this is the thing about state laws, because in California we do have an assault weapons ban.
we
The
do.
assault weapons ban uh, was was put into place through legislation after a school shooting, the Cleveland school in Stockton.
Stockton, which they do not mention. They mention a whole litany of school shootings, but they never cite the Stockton school shooting, which was earlier than Columbine.
I know, but if you go to my column on the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund at aldef.org/blog, I mention it because it was critical, because it was in Stockton. It was in a school where most of the kids who were killed were Asian American, Cambodian, Thai refugees. And I actually talked to a victim who survived, and she recalled the day in 1989 when it happened. I mention it because California has a constitution where it does not implicitly state that individuals have a right to bear arms. So for the longest time, we've had an assault weapons ban. It's been challenged. It was challenged a year ago. That challenge has been stayed, but it's still, it's still a threat. The point is, we need other states to have this, and also this very ban in California was a model for the assault weapons ban in on the federal level until it was allowed to expire in 2004. So states can do it. I don't know if you're going to see a whole raft of states saying, I want to be like California," but the difference by having an assault weapons ban is you don't have 19 people dead. You might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That sounds even ridiculous and absurd to even say. Oh, well, we don't have 19 dead. We only have 5 dead in our school shooting. But that's what happens when you ban assault weapons, and it's sad that's the situation we're in. Hey, Dan, when you heard the Texas Department of Public Safety guy, McCraw, when you heard him admit that they screwed up, you don't think that's going to have any effect at all? I don't hear you now, Dan. Oh, still don't hear you, Dan. I think you got to jiggle the right handle. I don't know. Oh well, nope, not working. Oh, well, go back and then come back in. Let's see. We'll see how that works. For some reason. Well, I think that's going to be a critical thing. If how people respond to the news that it was a mistake, maybe an honest mistake, but this. I hate to say this, but if you are a reporter for a long time, like I've been, you start seeing like things repeat themselves in different stories, right? I mean, usually, and when there's a big F up in a situation, the standard line is mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. I mean, go back historically when anything in the public realm, government thing, scandal, and then when they come forward and say, well, we reviewed this and, mistakes were made, which is, I guess it's acceptable in some matters, but when you're talking about 19 school children, I don't know if mistakes were made is acceptable. Heartbreaking is what it is. And then, 19 kids, 2 adults, 2 teachers. Yeah, I don't know if mistakes were made is going to cut it. I just don't. I don't think so. So, I got it. Playing around with my tech. We're waiting to see if Dan gets back on because I want to ask him something politically, a political question that I raised. I think yesterday I brought it up. And he kind of touched on it a little bit. He said the people who are the January 6th guys, the insurrectionists, they're probably going to be unmoved, and they're going to cut the law enforcement folks a lot of slack for making the wrong decision. But it's clear now it's the wrong decision, right? I mean, you've got 19 law enforcement people in there inside the school, and instead of going in to deal with the shooter, because it should have been an active shooter, right? You have the chief of the school district police department saying, "Oh, it's a barricade situation," and that day it came out, yeah, we have a barricade barricade situation, and that's how it was reported, even on day one. So now we have a situation where they understand that, okay, barricade situation, so they don't go charging in. They're waiting for reinforcements, because they're going to go get this guy with the tax squad. And in the meantime, the communications folks, 911, they're getting calls from inside, from students. Or one in particular, one girl in room 212 who calls up twice, and she is just a kid, and she's talking about multiple victims. I don't know if I was ever in second, third, or fourth grade and I knew the term multiple victims. I don't know if that was even in my vocabulary, but unfortunately it is in the vocabulary of an American school child, 2022. And yet, even with that information, there was no movement to change, no movement to do anything differently. And that's a problem. And then we bring on Daniel Filkins. Hi, Dan. Are you back? Are you with us?
Nope.
Yeah, I hear you.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I don't know what's going on with the mic. I'm sorry.
So, Dan, let me ask you this question, because I've moved on. Turn down your inside monitor, because I hear me and it's going to echo.
Okay.
So here's my question. You said that the insurrectionists are probably going to cut law enforcement a lot of slack.
Yep.
And I just want to know, we talked about this high conspiratorial Republicans who are anti-immigration, they're pro-gun, they're on the Republican side. I guess this is the group we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The insurrectionists, right?
That's right.
So
That's correct.
they are so anti-immigration. When do you think race is going to rear its ugly head on this story? Because so far everyone's been on good behavior. So far no one said, oh well, they're all immigrants. No one said, oh well, they're taking all these jobs. No one has gotten nasty yet. But I think once you see the parents complain about law enforcement, once you see law enforcement cop to the fact that they made a mistake, I think, is this where we might see people say, well, these are immigrants and they don't deserve anything? Are we going to see that ugly anti-immigrant tack?
Yeah, it's possible. A lot of the locals, including Border Patrol agents, are Latino.
Yeah.
So, obviously 80% of the population in Uvalde is Latino. But more importantly, their police force is heavily Latino. I saw some people who looked Anglo, but it's in this day and age of mixed race, you can't tell just by color alone, and so that's part of the problem. I'm getting a message here that I need to take care of. Okay.
Well,
anyway.
But I'm just saying that, we talked about that AP survey that talked about the high conspiratorial whites who are anti-immigration, regardless of legal, it's illegal or illegal. And if they are a third of the Republican Party and the Republican Party isn't budging at all on gun legislation, well, it looks like they're controlling the debate.
Yes, they are. And no doubt the issue of race has already come up. It's just that it hasn't been out and aired in the public in any way. The way that I looked at the issue of race was when all of those Republicans were lined up, when Beto O'Rourke went in there and started attacking them,
Right.
verbally. Verbally. And they looked like they were going to attack him non-verbally.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's where race raised its ugly head, right? With the exception of Cruz, who I think Senator Cruz has got an identity issue, right? But he's whiter than white, really. So he's achieved his goal evidently, but that was where you could see the problem, and I couldn't tell if what the guy was statewide Department of DPS or something like that.
McCraw.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
Colonel McCraw.
yeah, that's where you're going to see part of the problem is who are the heads of departments, and those people will probably be careful enough not to directly raise the race issue, but it could have been a problem when it came to why did it take an hour for people who were maybe only a half an hour away or 20 minutes or 10 minutes away? They had a SWAT team.
Yeah.
SWAT stands for Special Weapons and Tactics. Okay, where were those guys? Okay.
Well, the school district had a SWAT team, but they were calling for the Border Patrol SWAT team to come out. And that's what took an hour. It took them an hour.
Right.
And
they said it was because they were assembling the appropriate weapons and materials. They didn't have shields, so they could attack the building. This was really, really bad. I mean, it was extremely embarrassing. I just heard another report of a Border Patrol agent who was having a haircut. Have you heard that one?
No.
He was getting a haircut. I haven't established this as fact, but evidently it's been up on CNN and MSNBC. He got a call from his wife, who is a teacher at the school. Okay, he starts running out of the barber shop. Okay, and the barber says, "Wait a minute, man. You can't go without a weapon." And he gives him his own shotgun, which he keeps in his shop. And this patrol agent gathers a couple of the other local Border Patrol guys who live in the area, and they're off duty right now, and they breach some way into the school and get a few of the members of their families, and this guy gets his wife and his kids out.
Oh, they got him out.
They got him out. So this is now the second story that I have heard. The first one has already been validated. The mom that says she was cuffed and then she got let go and then she went and got her kids out. That's the first story. That's been validated. And it's been validated by kids, who were survivors. So this is really horrible.
It's selfish gene time, and it's everyone for themselves. This is what I'm thinking is the ultimate message in such a big, massive gun state like Texas. That law enforcement, if you want, and this plays into the whole gun culture. If you want public safety, you're going to have to DIY, do it yourself.
Well, that's the problem.
Encourage people to get more guns, and it's going to make it more deadly. That's what I fear is going to happen, because when law enforcement is essentially neutered by a bad decision. Right, because they say, "Oh, well, this is a barricade." Not because you heard the Texas DPS guy when I played back his soundbite. When active shooters on, you go get them, you take them down. You shoot to kill. You go for them, and as soon as it's a barricade, now it's active shooter rules off. Now they stay put. They wait for some kind of directive, but they call for reinforcement. They called for the SWAT team, and it was the wrong decision.
Yep,
wrong choice.
You're asking me a question that can be answered on at least two levels, and one of them is it going to move to politics? And my answer is no, it's not. I think that Schumer ought to go ahead and push. The HR bill, the reps bill that's been sitting there for 2 years now? Wasn't it? Didn't they pass that right at the end of the Trump? No,
they got a bunch of bills that are just sort of languishing, waiting.
Well, but there's the one that is a limitation on. It's kind of a assault weapon ban 2 version, and it's really the. Major emphasis is really on not registration, but background checks.
Right.
That's where the major emphasis was, and they think that they might be able to pass something that looks like that. But I think Schumer's right. You got to push it and show that all the Republicans are going to vote against it. Plus a couple of Democrats. But now there's a subcommittee, the informal ad hoc group, right, of Republicans and Democrats that are supposedly working on something. Probably a red flag law.
I think if politicians were smart, they should know. And I think McConnell, he recognizes this. You need some kind of bipartisan thing now because you got 19 kids, but like I said, I'm waiting for someone to play the anti-race card and say, well, yeah, I know these 19 kids in Uvalde, but hey, we got to think of our rights. And maybe this is going to be a message. The further away from Uvalde you are, because you said the closer to Uvalde, it's a more multiracial, we are the world kind of situation. There's more diversity.
It's like that all along the border. So
yeah, exactly. But but the rabid, double conspiratorial whites who are really driving the Republican Party.
Yeah, that's right.
The further away you are, Montana, Idaho, the Midwest, the South. What are you thinking when these are immigrant legals? I mean, double conspiratorial.
Well, they'll ask. Are they legals?
Right.
They will ask. That will come up. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and when it does, then people say, well, I don't know if we should extend any services to these folks if they weren't even legal, right? I mean, you can almost anticipate hearing that.
Yeah, they won't even go that far. They'll just question whether or not they're legal. They'll pull a Fox cable position.
Right.
It's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to move the needle that much as far as the 2022 elections are concerned. If it does move the needle, it's only going to be in that middle group. It's not going to change Republican Party minds.
Right.
They have to stay the course. They have to stick with what they're doing. I was surprised when Abbott, I hate calling him governor, but when Abbott decided not to go to the NRA conference, right?
Well,
why not? I mean, everybody knows what his position is. Yeah. But he's going to be going to Uvalde reportedly and hanging out there for a while. If it was me and I lost somebody, I wouldn't want that guy anywhere near my city.
Well, how about a couple questions on the politicians? Trump is speaking today at the NRA. What do you think?
He's going to come out and condemn the crazy and say this is one isolated guy. That's if he's intelligent. The guy can't stop talking about himself though, so he'll figure out some way to talk about himself. If it were me, I would have gone in. Give me a gun. I would have gone. He's man, and people still like this guy. They can't get enough. They can't get enough.
Well, this is the thing. Instead of looking at what McCraw, the Department of Public Safety guy, said, say, hey, it was a horrible decision. We made a mistake. We screwed up. Right? Instead of focusing on that, they'll probably keep focusing on Salvador Ramos, the 18-year-old kid.
That's right.
Who goes in, and then they'll say, hey,
he's crazed. And he's killing his own kind. That's how they'll raise the race issue.
Right. Right.
He's killing his own kind.
Right. And that will somehow give people enough space to say, okay, we'll give this.
It ain't that crucial.
You're right.
We shouldn't be making national policy based on an incident like this.
Right. We'll give it maybe a week after the funerals, but then, like all good shootings in America, they fade. Like how many people yesterday, May 26th, was the 1-year anniversary of the San Jose rail yard.
Right.
A couple of
VTA.
Asian Americans lost their lives. And how many people remember about Paul Mejia? How many people can remember just one name of a victim of that just a year ago, right? Or even the perp. The perp who, had a stockpile of guns and went in with, camouflage and full arsenal and was like a living video game going from office to office. No one talks
Yeah.
about San Jose. How about how many people remember 2019? I was driving through America during the time when Dayton, right? The Ned Pepper's Bar, downtown Dayton. And how many people remember that one?
Right.
And I just,
Right.
I mean, if they go to my ALDEF column, I wrote about it. And 2019, I thought, well, this has got to change or something's got to happen. Of course, within a couple of days, there was El Paso at the Walmart. And then there was the shooting at the Gilroy Garlic Festival.
Yep.
I mean, it's all these.
They don't mention that one either.
They don't mention any of these.
Yeah.
None of these. I mean, they barely mention Newtown. Thank goodness they'll say, 10 years after Newtown.
Right.
And that's the connection. But it's to indicate to people that we've had school shot before. I thought when Newtown went down in 2012, right? 10 years ago. I thought that was it. As soon as kids were killed, that was it. But sadly, no.
No. Not only did they let it cool off and not do anything, people like Alex Jones came out and said it was all a fraud. That it didn't happen.
Right.
And people were willing to believe that. People were willing to say that the parents were crisis actors. Remember that?
Right. Yeah.
They did the same thing to the kids at Parkland.
Right.
At Marjorie Stoneham, they said the same thing, that they said that Mr. Hogue, right, was a crisis actor. It's really bad. People would rather believe complete BS, completely afactual, right? And I think that they're willing to look at the maimed bodies of kids and say, it's not that important. Gee, that's sad. But it was all because of a crazy guy. You can't blame it on guns. Okay,
Yeah, and-
it's a crazy guy.
And once again, I mentioned it. I just want to make sure that I'm not thinking out of left field. But at some point, if it seems like they're losing, it's sort of like Ted Cruz poking the Sky News reporter when he was asked a tough question. At some point, they're going to raise race, right?
Yeah,
And they're going to say, look at these immigrants.
yeah,
And look, their kids are going crazy. And look at the victims.
yeah. Well, violence of this type, particularly, carries such trauma that you really have to worry about what's going to happen to the survivor kids, right? I mean, I'm very interesting. See, Parkland was a little bit different because the kids were a little bit older. They were teens. But when you're looking at Newtown and when you're looking at this situation and they're so young, the degree of damage has to be, it's only logical, right? That it's going to be much stronger, much rougher because they have less of an ability, however intelligent they might be, they have less of an ability to handle it emotionally than they might if they were a little older. But this is going to be a time of real crisis for the whole town, right?
Yeah. Well, definitely post-traumatic stress. And if you're a kid, I just can't believe that one little girl who witnessed all this, and she covered herself with blood to play dead. So
Her friend's blood.
Yeah, her friend's blood. Yeah, she covered herself with her friend's blood so that the shooter would just say she's dead and would spare her, and he did spare her. I mean, she got hit by some stray, bullet action that grazed her, but she survived. At least the gunshots, but will she survive the memory? That's the big question.
Yeah, we're not. We have to look at. So, the other thing that I was concerned about is copycat, because the fact that they're shooting grammar schools ever since Newtown, right?
Yeah.
They're shooting elementary schools. there has to be a psychological twist to that. And unfortunately, both of those killers are dead, right? And we can't get a handle from them on what the hell their motivation was. But it's got to be something to do with the feeling that they're victims and that they want to take other people with them. I mean, it's kind of an odd revenge attitude,
Yeah. Well, I mean, does this bring up the discussion about video games that are more violent, movies that are violent? Does it bring up the fact that here was an 18-year-old kid who, on his birthday, ends up buying, two new rifles and, multiple magazines? I mean,
375 rounds supposedly.
yeah, I mean, this is
It's kind of weird, because rounds aren't usually sold that way unless he was buying them in 25 round packs. But they're not usually sold that way. They're sold 25, 50s, 100s, like that. So 375 is kind of weird. And it's
maybe he got a
223
deal.
caliber. Pardon me?
Maybe he got a deal.
Maybe got a sale. Oh
Yeah.
my God, you sick. But it's
Sales.
possible. It is a possible, right? Yeah. You see, there's more to it than just the gun, too. Everybody keeps focusing on the gun. In my class, I focus on the bullet, okay? Because I
Why the
show,
bullet? Why the bullet?
yeah, the 223, okay, because it's a tumbler. It was specifically designed to maim more effectively than any other bullet. It's a tumbler. Once it hits something, and they always say it hits human flesh, whatever it hits, right? It doesn't go straight. And it might fragment, but it actually isn't intended to fragment. It's intended to tumble around so that if it hits you in the shoulder, it could rip your arm off. If it hits you in a typical central, abdominal area, it could come out your shoulder. Okay.
So this was an evil kind of bullet.
It's called a tumbler, and it's intended specifically not only to penetrate and impact. It's intended to travel around at high velocity once it's inside somebody's body. That's what it's done. That's what it's for. Okay.
Okay, so when you say you concentrate on the bullet instead of the gun,
No, not only the gun. Everybody focuses on the gun, but it's the bullet that does the damn damage.
okay, so when you say when you focus also on the bullet, that shows the kind of intent.
Well, no. I'm not just talking about intent. I'm talking about the degree of damage that it does. So if you're going to outlaw something, okay, here's what a lot of people are very critical of beyond just the general notion of policy and law, right? It is really simply that a lot of the laws that have been passed, including the assault ban, especially the original ban on assault weapons in California, right? It was just language. Okay, it was just language. So when they started calling them assault weapons, the manufacturers and sellers said, no, they're tactical weapons, right? And that took it out from underneath the rubric, right? The legal rubric. Okay, they said, okay, you can't have a pistol style handle, right? And so what did they do? If they had stock on ARs that had a pistol grip, they sawed off the pistol grip. So
Right.
I went to the gun shows to see what they did, and that's what they did. They sawed off the pistol grip. That made it legal. Okay?
All right, so all they did really was they took the language and they
Exactly.
manipulated the gun to fit the language, and they
Exactly.
they bypassed it.
Exactly.
And then the bullet,
The bullet's the same damn bullet.
but the bullet also shows intent. It shows that, hey, I'm not out there, to shoot, deer. Or, that's a bad thing too. But they're not hunting for recreation.
That's
They're
right.
hunting to maim and kill people.
That's what the purpose of the gun is.
Yeah.
To do it faster. More people, faster. That's what the purpose of the gun is.
And self-defense, unless you are a one-man army against, Russian military.
They've been watching too many movies, man.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you don't need a multiple, a semi-automatic weapon to fight off someone who's breaking and entering your home and trying to.
And actually the rifle is the least effective in those situations, and it's the most dangerous for your neighbors.
Right.
Those things penetrate, all kinds of stuff, penetrate walls quite easily. The better weapon, most people will tell you, is a shotgun if you're going to defend yourself inside your home and all the rest of that.
Because a shotgun is just buckshot that sprays out,
Right.
and it doesn't endanger, like you said. I mean, bullets
Yeah.
go through walls and endanger
Right.
neighbors. Yeah, it's dangerous for other people, which is why, which is something that the gun people don't. They just say, "Well, look, we need the gun. It's our right," and they won't consider anything that would impede that right, which is silly because there's lots of things you can do to make it better for them and make it better for the public.
The Stockton school shooting back in '89,
AK-47.
AK-47, and the reason that AK-47s back then were really popular was because that was the gun that theoretically defeated the United States and all of its allies in Vietnam. Okay, so that made it popular as a weapon of war. Secondly, it was really cheap. You could get those really cheap because they were being made by the Chinese and all kinds of other Asians, right? It's an original Russian design, but it was made because it's cheaply made. It's easy to make those suckers. And
I see the AK-47 was the gun of the past, and now it's an AR-15.
Yeah. Well, it is more accurate, and like I said, it has the tumbling bullet. The neat thing about the AK-47 was that they could actually adapt it enough so that you could pick up American rounds and use them. But the other way didn't work, right? You couldn't pick up a Kalashnikov round and use it in an AR-15.
Well,
and also the news is getting everything wrong, right? They keep saying that's a stronger, more deadly weapon than what was issued to our forces, our military, fighting in Southeast Asia, fighting in Vietnam. That's only partially true, right? The reason the M16 was adopted was because, yes, the 14 kept on jamming, right? Okay, so that's why, but it was adopted and it was used. If you take a look at the video, you can see that it was being used, right, later on in the war, because we didn't get out until 75, right? I mean, Nixon was trying to get us out, and they were trying to make a deal. Remember the stupid table deal? What they didn't like the fact it was an extended oval table. They wanted a round table. It was the Paris supposedly
the peace
treaty. Yeah, the peace talk. It was just a really stupid time, right? And we're entering one of those again now.
Yeah, it can't be more stupid than it is now, because right now it looks like we have these deaths. And Biden will be there, I think, on Sunday. Is that going to make a difference? I mean, he's not going to be helped by any of this, is he?
Nah.
He's not.
He's just, he'll just be doing. It's going to be kind of redundant, right? He'll be doing his empathy thing, which is sincere. Yeah. I take the man as what he is, which is not what I could say about Abbott or Cruz or any of those guys, right? But at the same time, I don't know how effective it's going to be. He can't. I don't think he's going to be successful at using executive authority, right, to do some kind of measure that would really put an effective clamp, right? That's what we're talking about here. Effective laws, okay? And many of the laws that were passed, even the ones in California, really weren't very effective. And the best illustration of that, the best demonstration of that, is now we're going after ghost guns.
Right.
Okay. Right. Well, you could you could order the parts online for years, man. Right. Yeah. And so all of a sudden now, if your barrel is starting to mess up and it's this is legal talk now. I'm talking about legal activity with your gun. If your gun barrel is starting to show problems and you're losing accuracy, right? And you could get a new gun barrel. Well, what does that do? Well, the old gun barrel, if it was used in an illegal manner, right, whatever that be, Okay, the bullet is traceable back to that gun barrel. You get a new barrel, and
It's a
and
new
any
gun.
of the bullets from you're home free, man. Okay, so you could always do that, and most barrels are not serialized. There's no serial number on the barrel. Okay, what they put the serial numbers sometimes on the slide, but if they do the slide, they do it both. I'm talking about an automatic now.
Yeah.
You know, they
Well,
do
this
it
is
there and they do it on the frame. Okay,
well, this is the
so
thing about the gun owners or gun legislation. It's got to be smart. They're going after the ghost guns now because they're seeing that there are all these ghost guns that are committing the crimes.
yeah, but look at and who are but what is the right saying? There's that's ridiculous, right? There's only a small percentage of the crimes that are being committed with the ghost guns, right? And so they take a look at all of the crimes, and then they say, okay, look, only a few of them are being committed by the ghost guns, and it could be a few thousand, right? But they're saying, look at the percentage. I mean, these guys, they lie as easily as they breathe, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's why no matter what kind of law gets passed, there's always a kind of neuter effect that makes it less effective.
And then they point at that. Then they say, look, that law's not effective. What are they saying? They say, okay, you can register all the guns you want. They wouldn't have stopped that last killing. They wouldn't have stopped that killing over there. They wouldn't have stopped this killing over here. Okay. That's where we're at.
One thing is true, though. If someone didn't have a semi-automatic weapon, and I pointed this out, you don't kill 19 people, you might kill 5. That's not necessarily a victory in my book, but you've lessened
well, and there's also the other issue. Why is it lessened? Because you can't fire as fast, and because the damage done by the bullet isn't as great. Secondly, right, or maybe even primarily, okay, it's less of a threat to law enforcement. It's less of a threat to law enforcement, right? So they can get in.
Yeah,
okay?
and that point is relevant to Uvalde because when you got 19 cops out there thinking, oh, it's a barricade situation, we need reinforcements. Let's give it an hour and call for border patrol tax squad.
Can you imagine they actually wanted to give it an hour? I know they wanted those guys there as soon as they could get it, but they settled for an hour. I wouldn't have.
They thought, like I said, they thought it was a barricade, but they should have been able to switch as soon as they knew that that little girl was calling in on a cell phone saying multiple dead. He's moving into another room.
You know what SOP is? SOP in a situation like that is the first thing they do is break out a map of the buildings. And then they locate where the guy is, what his movements are. And they do it using not only sound from shots fired, but just he's going to be the only thing moving in there unless it's groups of students trying to get away. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is not rocket science, man. But they didn't even do that. They didn't even isolate where these people were. How is it that a mom and then a dad in the company of other border patrol people, right, were able to get in and pull people out? Okay, and that's because they knew where the people were. How did they know that? Because they were on the freaking phone, in communication with them. That's how they knew. Okay, what were the cops doing?
They were waiting for their commander to say, "Hey,
they're waiting for the guys with the shields and the heavy body armor." That's who they're waiting for.
Also, they were pushing away other parents. Right? They were outside saying, "Stay away. We've got this," but they didn't.
How about the woman who claimed that she had been handcuffed temporarily, and then they denied that ever happened, and then a bunch of other people came forward and said, "No, that's true. We got handcuffed too." So we're in really a hell of a fix here.
Yeah, well, it's just that the people who should have known and the people who want us to trust them have failed us. So here's my exit question, Professor Dan. Who should be held accountable? What should be?
Oh, I just had this conversation with Linda, with my wife.
Yeah,
everybody up and down should be held accountable. And unfortunately, my position, it's going to be really tough because the population of the whole town is less than 15,000. Mm-hmm. So if you fire all the cops, are you going to be able to have cops? Okay, especially after that mess. Okay, but look, they had their own SWAT team. They had a local group. They had all kinds of people that had arms, and then they say, well, maybe they were underarmed. I saw guys in the regular DPS uniforms, and they were carrying the short assault weapons, right? What are they called? Carbines. You
So
know,
they want
essentially
to,
they're the AR-15 carbines, but theirs are fully automatic. And I saw one guy walk into his car and putting that away. So what the hell? Don't tell me that they were not armed properly. Some of those guys had the appropriate guns.
that's always the one of the criticisms that, oh well, the bad guys are armed better than our good guys. Well, here's an example of the good guys not being fully armed, but just not having the mental capacity to
You
figure
could
out.
understand the first few guys going in with handguns and maybe shotguns, but a lot of commentators have always said, and what do you and I see when we get stopped by a car? Whether it's a local cop or it's a CHP, what do you see? There's a freaking shotgun right there, okay? And they usually have a carbine style fully automatic weapon in the trunk. Okay? And so don't give me that. Don't tell me that it's about waiting for the proper reinforcements and all the rest of that stuff.
Well,
Okay?
that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. So we're going to hold everyone
Yeah,
accountable.
it is so bunk. It
Yeah.
is just really so bunk,
we
man.
got to hold everyone accountable, but nothing's
Everyone,
gonna happen.
everybody from the top down, man. They should all be swinging from a gallows, as far as I'm concerned. They're terrible. These
Yeah.
people were so inept. I've been getting calls asking, what the hell? How could that possibly happen? And part of it is culture. I don't think they were ready for that. I don't think people don't think there could be some nutty kid that's going to come in with an AK
Hey.
or an AR. They don't think that. And what are you doing? If you're SWAT, you're supposed to think that. You're supposed to consider those possibilities.
And active shooter means you go for the gun.
That's it.
You go for it.
What does that mean to you? I mean,
Well, look, I'll tell you, I never have encountered active shooter training as like until I taught a couple semesters at your
at
former,
SF State.
and then that was a real thing. I went through several active shooter trainings, and it was really eye opening to
Yeah.
think, oh, this could happen in our class. What
It
would
could.
we do? And we had our doors open. What do we do?
Before we started having active shooter training, I would ask that in my classes. Because we have to cover the Constitution, so obviously we have to cover the Second Amendment, and then I talk about the Second Amendment and abuses of the Second Amendment and all the rest of that stuff and crazy people and everything else. And I said, okay, so somebody comes in through one of these doors, and we have two sets of entrances. We have the one at the top of the amphitheater and one right here on the side of the of the bottom of the amphitheater. I said, so what do you do? Somebody comes in armed. What do you do? I said, I know what I'm going to do. Do you know what you're going to do? Right? And my action would not involve crying
Yeah.
and diving to the ground, right? Mine would be a little bit more, be different. But I had an advantage, right? I got this much bigger, heavier table in front of me.
Yeah, well, I think that was an eye opener for me that when I taught there, had to go through that. Can you imagine these kids who are saying, "Oh, well, we've gone through active shooter training since kindergarten."
That's right.
No, I mean all throughout, and then to hear a kid today say, "I'm not sure I want to go back to school. I'm afraid I'm going to be shot. I'm afraid."
What a surprise.
Well,
Who wants to be a teacher?
well,
Who
exactly.
wants to be a teacher? You got these clowns now saying, what, arm up again? They said the same thing about Newton.
Yeah.
They said the same thing about Parkland, right?
Yeah.
We should train the teachers. That's crazy. These people
Well,
are crazy.
I just recall back when I wrote a column for Filipinas magazine back in 1990 something.
Oh, I'm guilty of doing that every once in a while.
And the column I wrote was I talked about kids needing an armored backpack.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And I talked about, oh well, my kids are going to school. I better get them a Barney armored backpack.
Yeah, they're pushing those again. They started pushing those again.
I know. I saw them. But back in the 90s, it was a satire. Now it's a public service to say, oh, you're sending your kid to a school, you need a backpack that's fully bulletproof. It's sad.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sad comment.
what if they shoot you in the front? I mean, I
Well, no,
guess you wear
you
the
take it
backward.
off.
Yeah, you wear it backwards.
Yeah,
Right, right,
yeah,
yeah.
wear it backwards, or you take it off and use it as a shield.
All right.
Uh, Sad commentary about our times, and we're going into Memorial Day. So,
It's kind of odd. It's kind of
well,
odd.
no less odd than last year. Remember, we had that memorial is essentially a Memorial Day shooting in
Yeah.
the San Jose rail yard. It it was sad because you Memorial Day is for the soldiers.
Yeah.
And Memorial Day is for those veterans, but it seems that every American citizen today in our gun culture state, our gun culture nation, is fighting the gun epidemic. We're
Yeah.
in that gun epidemic war, and we're
Well,
veterans.
I
If we're
was watching.
survived.
I was watching. There's an Asian-owned gun shop. They also teach shooting skills and basic safety and all the rest of that stuff down in Santa Clara. And when during COVID, when the attacks started, the frequency of anti-Asian violence started up. I asked them to keep in touch with me. I was going to call them, let them know, or have them let me know what the rate of expansion of their market was. And they said in 1 week it tripled.
Huh.
That gun purchases tripled. And so I don't know if they did this because of me, but within a day or two, one of the local stations was covering the sales at that shop. And they were showing all these guys. Most of them looked like they were in their 50s or so. They were a little more advanced in age. They weren't all young.
Yeah.
So they looked younger than me, but they were probably in their 50s. It could have been in their 60s, but they were older men, above 40. Let's put it that way, right? That were in there checking out guns and buying guns. And there was a whole line of people. I mean, the whole counter was covered, and then they had a line of people towards the door. And so there it was, a lot of people gunning up, and
Yeah, well,
they're not
that's-
trained, man. That's a thing that's really bad.
Yeah,
And
but this is
the
part-
local gun store, gun range shut down. The South San Francisco gun range shut down. So,
This
where
is
do you
part of
train?
this is part of the trend, though, nationwide. Everyone's getting a gun.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, not I, but I
There it
should-
is. It's like what? There are 400 million guns and only 320 something million people.
Yeah,
And then
well,
80% of the guns are concentrated in 10% of the population, right?
well, here's the stat I got from Ron Bronstein, Atlantic Monthly. He said 20 states where the gun ownership per capita is the highest send 2/3 of all Republican senators. 20 states, and if you add the 2/3 of all states that voted for Trump, that counts for 70 million people. Now, the 20 states with the smallest gun ownership, 190 million people. So it shows why there's nothing going to get done because those small states. But maybe it's a case for secession. Maybe it's a case for changing, who gets what votes in the Senate. I know it's not going to happen, but it is absurd when the great state of California gets 2 votes, and it's equal to a state like Rhode Island,
Idaho, Rhode
Idaho,
Island.
yeah, Delaware.
One of the Dakotas,
What? Yeah, both Dakotas together.
Yeah, whatever.
I mean, I'm just saying that's why we're not going to get anything done in the Senate.
Nope.
Maybe we can get something done in the states.
I don't know. They're looking, McConnell is talking, possibility of red flag.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, hey. Well, one last thing before I let you go, Dan, and I appreciate you being on, as always, on Fridays. But what about our acquaintance, Attorney General Rob Bonta? Do you think this is going to help him somewhat because he's AG, he's the top cop. Certainly, people thinking about Uvalde, I think, is going to have to help him somewhat. I mean, he's not been real pro cop, really. I mean, he's some of the law enforcement see him as antagonistic, but after seeing what they did in Uvalde, it may soften people to really embrace Bonta as not just the appointed AG, but the newly elected AG.
Yeah, he has not been even while he was in the assembly, while he supported legislation. Some of it didn't pass, but when he supported legislation that wanted to raise standards, for police, I don't think he got that much flack for it. The thing that he was best known for was actually going after corporations. For not only for taxes, but also about what was I going to say? Pollution.
Oh yeah.
He was really known for that. This could help. It depends on if he takes a stand on it. I like his public service announcements. His campaign public service announcements are.
Right.
Well, I don't know if they're PSAs. His
No,
campaign.
they're ads.
They're ads. They're ads. They're not. Yeah, they're ads.
They're going after ghost guns, and
right.
He's for a woman's right to choose. So
that's right. Those are the two main things that he mentioned.
So anyway,
he might add something to his list, but he can't. I don't think he can say we got to get more intelligent police officers, or we're going to have to only pick the ones that are courageous. Yeah, he can't really.
That's a point, because it seemed that out of the 19 officers, no one wanted to be insubordinate to the chief, who was saying, this is a barricade situation, we're not going to go charge him. But as soon as you knew that the barricaded shooter was in fact an active shooter, if you were a law enforcement agent worth your salt, wouldn't you then go after the shooter?
Yeah. Yeah. That's just not. I don't know.
And I'm a dove talking. But
yeah.
If you are duly deputized, you got your gun, you're standing outside in the hallway, one of the 19 law enforcement folks, and you understand, because you have your ears peeled to 911 and you hear that there is an active, or that
even if you can't confront the guy and you're afraid that you might be taking some heavy rounds, there are ways to distract the dude.
Oh yeah.
There are things that you could. He's alone.
And you're 19 in the hallway.
He's got to pay attention. He's got to pay attention to whatever's moving up and down the hallway. And as long as he's not pulling the trigger on the people, then you're doing a good thing. But they just waited.
Yeah.
It's going to be really bad. I mean, if the facts come out and they show that during that 50+ minute timeline that kids are getting shot, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be easy to show that. It's going to be really easy. And they're not letting loose in the video. They're supposedly video, material, interior school video.
They're already talking about. The fact that the decision was made, and they're saying, I mean, you heard the guy, right?
Which guy? DPS or the local?
DPS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just play it again, because I think it's kind of interesting. Here's McCraw.
The decision was made on the scene. I wasn't there, but at the same point in time, a decision was made that this was a barricaded subject situation. There was time to retrieve the keys and wait.
They're waiting for the keys. Can you get that? They weren't going to break down.
That's right. Yeah, that's the other laugher.
These are courageous people waiting.
We gotta wait. We gotta wait for the keys.
For a tactical team with the equipment to go ahead and breach the door and take on the subject at that point. That was the decision. That was the thought process at that particular point in time.
So the press is going after them.
Oh sure.
But here's
hindsight. Hey, the benefit. Hey, stand by. Hey, stand by. Hey, stand by. Right. I got it. Okay. Hey, for the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision. Period. There's no excuse for that.
So now that sounds like a confession, huh?
Well, why was he so loose the day before, making all this crap up about somebody being, somebody being available to confront? That's the other issue. Is there supposed to be, everybody had access to money, right? After Newtown and after Parkland, all the school districts had access to money. All you had to do was put in for security, and you know that every state is going to do that. They're going to, even Texas is going to pull that kind of money. They're going to reject Medicare, right? But they're
Yeah.
going to, and ACA, but they're going to pull in law enforcement money.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so they had a SWAT team. So if they had a SWAT team, part of that was being paid for by federal and state money, right? And they're not raising that money on a local level, okay? So what the hell are you talking about when you say there was a resource officer on the campus and they
Right,
confronted him, and then the next day, less than 24 hours later, what does the guy say? There was no officer on site. Well, why the hell not?
He was off somewhere, and he came. And the story gets better though. He comes, goes right by the shooter, and confronts a teacher who he thinks is the shooter.
Oh no, I
Yeah.
didn't hear that.
Yeah,
Wow, this is new.
he confronts the teacher he thinks is the shooter, and also, and then the shooter is actually hiding in the bushes, and then enters a door that's been propped open. by a
Right.
teacher. So, all right, here's McCraw again. He says, back to the mea culpa.
Hey, for the benefit of hindsight, where I'm sitting now, of course it was not the right decision. It was the wrong decision. Period. There's no excuse for that. But again, I wasn't there, but I'm just telling you, from what we know, that we believe there should have been an entry at that as soon as you can. Hey, when there's an active shooter, the rules change. It's no longer, okay, it's no longer a barricaded subject. You don't have time. You don't worry about outer perimeters. And by the way, Texas embraces active shooter training, active shooter certification. And that doctrine requires officers, we don't care what agency you're from, you don't have to have a leader on the scene. Every officer lines up, stacks up, goes and finds where those rounds are being fired at, and keeps shooting until the subject is dead, period.
And that, to me, I mean, he was so definitive. You go until the guy is dead, period. Well, you had 19 waiting around. That's a bad look.
Yep. You know.
That's all you can say. Bad luck. Bad luck.
Yeah.
All right, Dan. Well, so
Now
we're
that
gonna
I'm
have,
totally depressed. Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna have it. Well, these are our finest, Texas's finest, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and it's sad, but how we're gonna, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna be so bad we're gonna want to forget about it faster than Dayton, El Paso, Parkland,
Yeah. Well,
Newtown,
that we is the gross American we, I assume. 'Cause
yes,
it
it is the
certainly
gross
is not.
American.
It is not us.
I mean, we always remember it. We can't help but remember it. But like I said, there's something about these shootings when they happen. They're with us for a week. That maybe we'll make it through the funeral part, and then but after, how much longer? I mean, Parkland had a good run. Newton had a kind of good run, but now it's been 10 years. No one talks about Newton. It's been years. No one really talks
They
about
only
Parkland.
talk about all of these incidents as part of the list, and I'm glad you brought up Stockton because I was getting sick and tired. I actually tweeted a couple of the
Oh, yeah.
cable stations that why aren't you mentioning Stockton?
Well,
Yeah, well, it was only 6 kids died, though
Yeah.
30 were wounded. Right? That what?
1989, too far away, right? It's not
Too
convenient to
few,
mention.
too few. It's low on the numbers.
Yeah,
It's low on the numbers.
and yet, as I pointed out in my column, it was the shooting that shocked the nation.
It
And
was at the time.
Yeah, at the time made America made California act, and then
You know
and
what? I read your column, and what's missing from everybody's coverage of Stockton was that there was a denial for at least 2 or 3 days, maybe up to 4 days, by local police, by state police, and the FBI that there was any racial motivation.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, yeah. And what broke it loose was a KCRA, right, the NBC affiliate in Sacramento, interviewed some of the guy's co-workers, and they said he was racist as hell.
Yeah.
There wasn't a day that went by that the guy wasn't talking racist stuff about everybody, and particularly his hatred of goofs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He hated Asian Americans. You know, I left that out only because of time, and because I just wanted to mention, and I wanted to get to I interviewed one of the survivors, a girl who was 8 years old there at the time. And years later, I talked to her, and she recalled that story about her friend being shot.
Right.
And that's the only reason why I didn't want to get too much into Patrick Purdy was the shooter's name. Notice that's also a big thing. No one wants to talk about the shooter and give out his name because I don't know. They don't want to give him the notoriety.
They don't want to glorify him. Yeah, they don't want to.
Although
glorify him.
it's not glorification to just get the name right and say, just like Brenton Tarrant is the guy in Christchurch in New Zealand, or like people don't even want to mention the Atlanta shooter's name, Robert Aaron Long, but I know that because I've written about him, but a lot of people don't mention him,
Right.
and I think you need to mention him, not to glorify him, but so people understand that this guy.
It's a stupid argument to say that by mentioning them you're going to glorify them, because the people who glorify them are going to be the copycat types anyway, and you're mentioning their name is not going to further encourage those people. Okay, they already are. If they already glorify the guy, they're going to act on that basis anyway, and there's nothing that you're doing that's going to contribute to that.
Yeah, and at the very least, there should be a kind of societal shame, a kind of group shame about the actions of this person, dead or alive, but there should be a recognition that this man has brought shame to his family, to himself, to his legacy, to his community. That's not glorification.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we had enough facts to make the comparison. If Red Flag had been in existence at the time, would it have led to him being detected, right, as a potential mass murderer? Same thing with the VTA shootings in San Jose, in Santa Clara.
All they needed to do is just not give him access to the guns.
That's where we're at, though. Well, see, that's the key issue, though, and they don't want to deal with the gun. We're hearing it again.
How about this? How about this? I heard a guy make this suggestion. Why not make it harder to get a gun instead of having this big entryway to go in and grab the gun you want and pay for it, go out and do whatever you want? Why don't you make it a little hole? There's still access, but it's a little hole to go through. You got to pass tests. You got to pass safety tests, physical tests, written tests. You got to make it like a pilot's license. What if you did that?
Or at least like a driver's license, for Christ's sake.
Or at
the very least, like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can kill people with a car.
Often done. Often done.
Right. Vehicular manslaughter, of course. But I mean, if you made it, if you put that requirement and made access a little tinier hole instead of making it this big wide hole that you can go in and. I mean, would that work, Dan? Would that satisfy
it might get legislated? Yeah, it might get legislated. I think there might be a couple of wobbly states that might adopt something like that, even if the feds don't do it. But yeah, I think that's logical. I think I can't remember which senator is working on it, but he is on that that ad hoc group that now is working on Red Flag, and I'm hoping that they'll come up with something that makes sense. But Red Flag does a couple of things, right? Because They keep talking about mental health, right? But they don't do anything about it. They don't fund better mental health, right? And they don't hire more counselors for the schools, which is going to be the first place that you're going to detect problems with kids, right? Is in the schools, and they see it all the time. You have to go see the vice principal when you get caught for acts of aggression, particularly if there's actual physical contact and all the rest of that stuff. So they know. The problem is they will probably treat it the way they treat rape and sexual harassment. They don't report it. They start acting like the freaking Catholic Church.
Right. Well, that's the thing. People don't report. People don't say or they're reluctant to
Sure. How about
take
the
some
Southern
name.
Baptist thing? The Southern
Oh yeah.
Baptist. Oh boy, here
Well,
we go. Right?
we're in that neck of the woods. I
Here
mean,
we are.
I lived in Texas for 4 years, and I'm familiar with a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm glad I got back to California. So, hey, look, Dan,
We gotta go.
I appreciate you being here. Have a great Memorial Day. I will be talking to
Be
you
safe.
later. You be safe. Have a great weekend. Have a vegan cookout if you can.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
am going to. I'm going to order from Chef Rena.
Oh, good. All right, I'll talk to you in a bit.
All
But
right.
thanks for being in the program. There's Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, Asian American politics, Asian American history, and pretty knowledgeable about guns. So I thank Dan for being here on the show. We had a couple of comments here. Let's see. Oh, here's a friend. He says, let's see. Here's a comment from a friend of mine, Mark Simeon. He says, if Dems seize the moment and don't let it go, they may be able to expose the radical right's anti-American, anti-democracy hypocrisy in time for the midterms. I kind of hope that, Mark. Mark, a good friend from high school. High school. That's more than like, oh my God, I don't want to say how many years ago that was. But, he's on the internet. Thank you for listening. If Dems seize the moment and don't let it go, they may be able to expose the radical right's anti-American, anti-democracy hypocrisy in time for the midterms. I kind of would like to think that that's the hope, but that AP survey that was released on May 13th that showed how many people in America on the Republican side are high conspiratorial thinkers. That means they're anti-immigrant. That means they believe in the great replacement theory. That's an example of high degree of being swayed by conspiracies. That's like 30% of the country. And I cross my fingers and hope maybe that those more moderate Republicans will come over and join others who are just safe and sane and can see through what you call, Mark, the anti-American, anti-democracy hypocrisy, because there's a lot of it. But it's an uphill battle. And like Daniel Phil said, he didn't think it's going to make a difference because people are entrenched. Second Amendment all the way. You heard Ted Cruz, say, take away people's rights. Changing laws wouldn't have prevented Uvalde. That's what he says. Anyway, we'll follow and see what happens with the NRA this weekend. And what Trump says later on today should be interesting. They're talking about guns, but no guns are allowed when President Trump, the former president, former twice impeached president, speaks in Houston. Just another one of those strange hypocrisies when it comes to guns. All right. With that, play my transition sounder. That's it for us today. we're going to enjoy the weekend. I hope you enjoy your weekend. When you get to this point in the show, this is where we just sit with ourselves and meditate for the moment and try to ground ourselves. And we breathe in, think space, and we breathe out. Breathing out, thinking free, space, free. And realize that every time we think we are constricted and we feel just being cramped in, we realize there's more space around us to see what's in front of us more clearly so we can make the best possible decisions we need to make about everything in our lives, as long as we know that there is space and we are free. And then we pay attention to a little loving kindness. And we try to stay positive in love of ourselves, toward others, but focusing on the kind of self-love. So we don't blame, we don't get into any shame, and so we could be of service to others. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Hey, catch our show Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific. Live. We do this live on Facebook, on Twitter, at Emil Amok. On our YouTube channel, Emil Guillermo. On Facebook at emilguillermo.media. Facebook Live, Facebook Watch. We're everywhere. Live. And then recorded. And live, but mostly recorded on amok.com. Have yourselves a good long weekend. Consider, well, you can go vegan meats, the impossible, the beyond, but beans and rice, fake hot dog. You don't have to grill anything that was once alive. Have yourselves a great weekend. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Mahal